Hey y'all, welcome back to Legally Live. I'm your host, McKinley Molasaw, criminal defense attorney in Austin, Texas. Today we are going to do part 2 of day 8 of our recap of the Kaitlin Armstrong trial, which happened in Austin, and I was present for most of the testimony. Today we will be focusing on the testimony of Pamela Mazak, and she is an analyst, and she is at the Attorney General's office. And she helped detectives to analyze the data from the cell extraction records and also from the Jeep Infotainment Center. She compiled all of her analysis into spreadsheets, but it turned out to be a lot of information, too much for the jury to go over. So she also presented a PowerPoint presentation to go along with her testimony. And so today I have decided to also present you guys with a presentation of Pamela Mazak's testimony to kind of tie everything in together. I think this is where the state really brought this case home, if you will. So without further ado, let's jump on in. So I have removed myself from the screen because I really want you to be able to see all the detail in this presentation. So again, this is Pamela Mazak from the Attorney General's office, and these are the points of interest that she looked at. She looked at the Fort Clark home, which was Colin Strickland and Kaitlin Armstrong's home, the Deep Eddy Pool Burger Bar, and the crime scene, which was 1708 Maple. Deep Eddy Pool, again, as a reminder, was where Colin and Mo went to go swimming. And then right next door is Pool Burger Bar, where they ended up having dinner. The first data that we're going to look at is the data of Kaitlin Armstrong's cell records. They are from Verizon, and it shows a disconnect date of 5/16/22. This is the call detail records for the date of 10/28/2021. So again, we're going back in history here. Just to let you know, Caitlin's information is going to be in yellow in this presentation. Colin's will be in a bright red, and Mo's will be in orange, and anything neutral will be in white. So the first text message that we see is Kaitlin texts Colin, and she says, I know you know better than to show up at Meteor with that girl. Aside from that, enjoy your evening. Then a little later, she texts him, where is the Dodge key? I can't find my helmet. And then a little later, tell me you didn't take my helmet. Then we see a record of her calls. She had called Colin as well right after these text messages. And then at 6:34 p.m., she calls Moriah Wilson's phone, and the phone call lasted for 1 minute and 28 seconds. Then at 6:41 p.m., she called her sister, Christine Armstrong, and that call lasted for 22 minutes and 38 seconds. If you will remember from the testimony, this is the day that Kaitlin Cash said that Moriah had gotten a call from Kaitlin on her phone, and back on 10/28/2021. This is when Moriah was in town staying with Cash, I believe, and Kaitlin and Colin were broken up, and he was starting a relationship with Mo. So this is where she calls Mo. Then you see a text message from Colin at 6:53 p.m. It says, could you please be an adult? And then later he sends a message saying, Mo left for Meteor with friends an hour ago. I am not going because I am trying to respect you. Yet I'm not feeling respect from you. Kaitlin responds, not the best feeling, is it? And then Colin responds with, yeah, you sure are paying it back. An hour and 30 minutes after Kaitlin called Mo, she gets an incoming text from Colin at 8:04 p.m. and it says, did you call Mo? WTF? And he also sends another message saying, can you talk? I really need to understand this. And her response was, sorry, can't talk right now. Then we fast forward to May of 2022, and we see that we look at from Caitlin's phone data, we see that she views Mo's Strava profile, right? On 5/9, she viewed it once. On 5/10, Kaitlin viewed Mo's profile 4 times. And then Moriah Wilson on 5/10 at 4:47, her flight arrives in Austin. So she was coming in Austin and she arrived on the 10th of May. On 5/11/22, the day of the murder, Mo sends a text to Colin at 9:01 a.m. that says, "What you thinking?" And her phone records show that the likely location of where she was when she sent that text was Cash's apartment. And this is a photo of Cash's apartment. And then we see that between Kaitlin and Colin, phone records show an arc location that most likely means they are at their home on Fort Clark and leave at 9 a.m. for their bike ride. Mo sends Colin a text 1 minute later at 9:01 a.m. So that previous text we saw on the last screen that said, "What you thinking?" came through 1 minute later, 1 minute after they started biking away from their home. And this map right here shows the distance between Maple Avenue, which is where Mo was staying, and the Fort Clark home, which is where Kaitlin and Colin live, right? So this is the distance between their cell phones at that time. Colin texts Mo at 11:12 a.m. when he returns from his bike ride. And he says, "I rolled out early with my buddy. I never heard from you." And then Moriah sends a text wondering if they're having problems with their phones again, communicating. And at 12:41 p.m., Mo texts Colin, "Do you have plans tonight? Cash has dinner with some college friends who are visiting, so I'm on my own." At 1:31 p.m., Mo goes on her solo bike ride. Colin arrives to his dentist appointment up north around 2:30 p.m. Mo is still on her bike ride. Colin sends a message to Mo saying at 3:15 p.m. that says, "Want to go swimming? Maybe swimming and a beverage." And at this time, he is at his dentist appointment. Kaitlin is heading downtown in her Jeep from South Lamar at this time. At 3:41 p.m., Colin follows up to Mo. "What do you think?" And then Mo agrees. Colin finalizes plans to pick up Mo on his motorcycle while he is still at the dentist. Kaitlin's Jeep leaves their home area soon after Colin arrives back home. Her phone and Jeep travel to South Lamar Boulevard and stop around 2:07 p.m. Her Jeep remains here for over an hour. And this is kind of the distance between where their home is and where her Jeep ends up going and stopping, right? So that's what it says right here. At 4:13 p.m., Kaitlin's Jeep arrives back home to Fort Clark. And at 4:24 p.m., Kaitlin calls Colin. And the call lasts for 3 minutes and 4 seconds. And Colin is still at the dentist. At 4:31 p.m., Mo sends a text to Colin that says, "Just got back. Yeah, that would be great." Kaitlin sends Colin a series of texts about real estate deals at the same time he is texting with Mo. While Kaitlin is texting Colin at 4:49 p.m., Mo sends Colin Cash's address for him to come and pick her up. At 4:54 p.m., Kaitlin begins to view Mo's Strava profile and activity. She looks at Mo's specific route and the starting and ending point to view the map. The starting and ending point on a map would guide the viewer to Cash's steps, so the stairs that lead up to her door. And just as a reminder, the the steps to her door are actually on the back alleyway, so they're not on Maple, which is, her address was 1708 Maple Avenue, apartment B, but the steps to get up to her apartment, you have to reach from the alley, and it's not actually on Maple, right? At 5:01 p.m., Colin's phone is on Mopac, traveling to the Maple Avenue location. And here we go. This is the address you get on Google Maps if you select Cash's steps. So if you are looking on Strava and then you go to Google Maps and you find that same area and you click on it and tell you and ask it to give you the address, it'll say 1704 Maple Avenue. I did this and this is the return I got on Google Maps, right? And this is also the address that Detective Spittler said he found in Kaitlin's deleted notes file on her iCloud account. Now, Cash leaves her home at 5:30 p.m. and Colin arrives to pick up Mo at 5:43 p.m. Mo locks Cash's door at 5:55 p.m. And then Mo and Colin's phones move together away from Maple. They arrive at Deep Eddy at 6:09 p.m. And on the right, we have a picture of Deep Eddy Pool. During this entire time, Kaitlin has remained at home through 6:15 p.m. Then at 6:24 p.m., Kaitlin calls Colin, but he does not answer. She then sends Colin a text at 6:25, so 1 minute later, asking if he wants to meet her for food and to discuss paperwork. Colin is at Deep Eddy this entire time. Kaitlin's Jeep begins to leave home at 6:33 p.m. and at 6:57 p.m., Colin and Mo head to Pool Burger, which is just next door to the pool, just like a few steps, The receipts from Pool Burger show us that at 7 p.m., they ordered food and drinks, and the first receipt was paid for by Colin Strickland's credit card. There is a second receipt, and the videos also show that Moriah ordered a frozen drink at 7:57 p.m., just a few minutes before closing, which was at the restaurant closes at 8 o'clock. At 6:33 p.m., we see Kaitlin's Jeep starts to move away from the house right north on South Lamar Boulevard. She stays in one location until 6:54 p.m. At 7:04 p.m., her Jeep is behind a business on South Lamar. At 7:15 p.m., she moves north on South Lamar. She has not received any replies from Colin. At 7:17 p.m., she sends Colin a text that says "Finny," in other words, like finished. At 7:20 p.m., the Jeep travels north on Lamar and crosses Ladybird Lake into the downtown area. Now, this is the distance from the area on South Lamar where she was behind that business and the location of Deep Eddy Pool, right? Or this star right here will show you where her Jeep was by 7:20 p.m. And this red balloon right here will show you where Pool Burger is. So that's how close she was to Pool Burger at 7:20 p.m. But her car shows she didn't actually go by there. Kaitlin makes a series of turns through downtown for 10 minutes. At 7:30 p.m., her phone goes off network. Location data for Kaitlin will come solely from the Jeep until 9:55 p.m., so from her infotainment center GPS. Kaitlin heads to I-35, then she goes east on MLK towards Cash's place. The Jeep circles the block twice using alleys around Cash's apartment, and then it goes to Ferdinand Street and stops for several minutes. This is just showing her route this is I-35, and then she goes east on Martin Luther King and then makes a turn onto Chestnut, then to Maple. And then this star over here is showing you where Cash's place is. And then this red balloon right here is showing you Ferdinand Street, where she ended up parking for several minutes. Kaitlin's Jeep is spotted on various video surveillance systems near Maple at 8:05 p.m., at 8:06 p.m., and at 8:08 p.m. And the videos are corroborated by the Jeep infotainment data. And the jury was shown the various video surveillance footage that depicted these 3 times, right? So there you can see the Jeep driving past the alley where Cash lives. And then that is the outside of Cash's from the alleyway. At 8:16 p.m., Colin and Mo leave Deep Eddy or the Pool Burger area, and video surveillance confirms this cell phone data. At 8:26 p.m., we see the Jeep on video surveillance just a few doors down from Cash. At 8:28 p.m., Colin and Mo arrive back at Cash's apartment. They are in the alleyway. Also at 8:28 p.m., all three phones are within a few hundred feet from each other. The reason that we know this actually is because the Jeep, and the other two phones are all within a few hundred feet from each other. At 8:29 p.m., Colin and Mo are outside Cash's apartment. The Jeep remains stationary on the side of the street for 3.5 minutes. At 8:35 p.m., Colin's phone moves north while Mo's stays at Cash's. Colin's motorcycle is seen riding away on surveillance video. At 8:36 p.m., Colin texts Kaitlin his false alibi about dropping off the flowers up north to a friend and asking her if she's eaten. At the same time, Mo Wilson unlocks Cash's door, and that sends a notification to Cash's phone. At 8:37 p.m., the Jeep is spotted traveling westbound in the alley next to where Mo was staying, and it was going very slowly. As you can see over here, that is the Jeep. Mo begins using her phone and apps within a few minutes of being dropped off. The Jeep pulls out of the alley and parks at 8:41 p.m. The Jeep is turned off and it's parked behind the Zion Church. I think it's called like Zion Hill Baptist Church. You can see it over here. That star is the parking spot where she parked. This is a close-up of the parking spot where the arrow is pointing. This right here, if you walk down this alley, you just walk down a few hundred feet and Cash's place will be on your right over here. And then this area right over here behind where this van is parked is actually where the bike was found. And the spots where she could have possibly been parked are either right here or there's another grassy spot on the other side of that Jeep right there where she could have been parked, which is right next to where the bicycle was dumped. So over here, you can see the parking spots. So here is one of the parking spots that she could have possibly been, or the other option is right here. And then the bamboo area is actually right here. You see, and then right here is where Cash's apartment is. At 8:43 p.m., Colin texts Kaitlin, "Are you back home?" At 9:07 p.m., call records indicate that Colin was at his house. He receives a phone call that lasts almost 9 minutes. At 9:13 p.m., Mo texts the podcaster. That would be the last text that her phone ever sent. Between 9:15 and 9:16, the court is played the ring video and audio of the two screams, followed by two gunshots, and then a 4-second pause and a final gunshot. At 9:17 p.m., Kaitlin's Jeep turns back on and begins to move. It heads west on East 17th Street. At 9:21 p.m., Colin texts Kaitlin, "Are you eating?" At 9:35 p.m., the Jeep is back down south in the area of their home. Between 9:43 and 9:46 p.m., the Jeep is at an apartment complex, and detectives had earlier testified that they tracked her GPS data to the dumpsters in that apartment complex during this period of time. At 9:47 p.m., Kaitlin pulls slightly off the road, and her phone is powered back on. At 8:48 p.m., she is home, and she turns off the Jeep for the last time that night. At 9:54 p.m., Cash calls 911. And at 9:55 p.m., Kaitlin's phone connects back to the network. And that actually concluded direct of this witness. So next we have cross-examination by the defense. They started off by asking her if anything in her presentation shows that Kaitlin was actually driving the Jeep, and she says no. And they ask her if she had had any video footage of Kaitlin driving the Jeep, if she would have put it in her presentation, and she says yes. So they're just saying like this This is all the information that you have, right? You don't have anything showing that she was driving that vehicle that night, right? There's no video surveillance. And also, the data that you were presented doesn't actually say Kaitlin was here, she was driving. These are her movements. And Mazak agrees. That's not what she's there for. That's not what her data represents. And that's not what her presentation represents. Defense also points out that at one point in her testimony, she said that Kaitlin started moving or Kaitlin was doing such and such, and instead of saying that the Jeep was moving. And so I think now would be a good time to also correct my data, which in my slides, sometimes I interchange between Kaitlin and the Jeep or her phone. And the presentation actually was only meant to represent what her phone was doing or what her Jeep were doing. Because again, they don't actually have a video of Kaitlin Armstrong pulling the trigger of the gun, nor do they have a video of Kaitlin behind the wheel of the vehicle. We only know this information based on Colin's testimony that she pulled back in the driveway in the Jeep and no one was with her. So after a little bit more defense cross, we get back to the state. And the prosecutor, Ricky Jones, begins to question the witness and says, can we agree that Colin Strickland was driving his motorcycle? And if he was, then Colin Strickland was not driving the Jeep. She agrees. He says, can we agree that whoever was using Armstrong's phone on May 11th arrived back at Strickland's residence at 10 p.m. that evening? She agrees. He then says whoever was driving that Jeep that was at the Cash residence went back to the Strickland residence. Can we agree on that? She agrees. Then he says, based on all the information we have, do you believe that to be Colin Strickland that was driving the Jeep? And she states no. And then the witness is done. So just to recap, this presentation that was showed to the jury was super, super powerful, in my opinion, for the state because it showed all of the important data that we have been presented throughout this case, right? So it showed all of the cell data, all the texts from all the phones at the relevant time periods. It showed the telephone calls that were relevant during these time periods. It showed the GPS data or the tracking data for the phones and where they were located during the relevant periods of time. It also showed the Jeep infotainment center and where the car was traveling at the relevant times. It incorporated the video surveillance footage and the relevant time stamps for those. And so the jury was reminded about that and how they corresponded to all this other data. It also pulled in things like the receipts from Poolberger and also the video showing that they were there and that their cell phones were there and that the receipts showed they were there. All of this all adds up to corroborate all of this evidence, right? And it was very powerful. In addition, the jury being reminded about where Kaitlin's Jeep was parked and when it began to move again after being played very loudly, that video footage from the Ring camera that where you hear the screams and the shots followed by the data showing that her Jeep immediately begins to move or like within a minute begins to move, maybe 2 minutes. Super powerful. And then that the phone arrives back to her residence and goes back, like she turns it back on and it goes back on network at the same time that the Jeep is stopped for the evening. Super damaging to the defense, right? Not much that they could do to work with this because it was so many different types of evidence, so many different witnesses' testimony was brought into this presentation. That makes it very hard for the defense to refute all of this, right? And so it just really started to look like it had added up. And like the reasonable doubt, if there was any, may have already started to fade, and the defense hasn't even put on their case in chief yet, right? So that's not good. but we'll have to see what happens in day 9 with the defense's case in chief. I believe that this is going to be the last witness for the state. At the end of this day, though, it's still unclear because they have not rested yet. However, in my opinion, this would be the best witness for the state to close on because you really want that all powerful witness to be at the end. So that's what the jury is going to have in their mind about the case's state. The state's case in chief, right? They want all of it to come together and really present the full picture right there at the end, like their most powerful testimony right at the end. So that is my thought on that. If you want to see more content on this case, I'm going to link down in my description the channels that have done recaps on this. Making Law Simple did live streams on this, and I joined him on some of them, and I will link that in the description, as well as Valhalla Awaits. And Legal Bites also did short, concise recaps of every single day of the trial, and she has a playlist for that. And also, I joined her on the live streams for later parts of this trial, and you can check those out too if you would like. Come back for day 9's recap. But in the meantime, go ahead and like and subscribe and share and comment. Do all the things. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.